there a mansion? Jesus said, I'll go. If it were not true, I would have told you so. Just a little while to linger here below. I'm getting ready to leave this world. I'm getting ready to leave this world. I'm getting ready for the gates open. Keep me watching. I'm getting ready to leave this world. Give the Lord a big hand clap of praise if you're getting ready. Amen. Worship Brother George as he comes tonight.
Amen. Now, I hadn't sang in a while.
Amen.
Me and Mary have sang, and Gilda, and several songs together, but just to sing alone, it's been a little bit. And I was thinking yesterday, and I talked to Mary early in the week, and I was kind of giving her, being cutting the fool with her about singing like I'd just sing anytime she'd ask me to. She even sent me a text. What? Just messing with her, but about singing, because sometimes, she'll text one of us or ask one of us to sing, and we're always, well, I don't know, hadn't really practiced, hadn't done this, hadn't done that. And so sometimes I give her some of that same grief, but this time I was like, nope, absolutely. Ready to sing, ready to worship the Lord, give Him praise, give Him glory. And I was thinking, what song am I going to sing about? And then this song wasn't the one I was thinking, but then it come to my mind, and I began to think about the words of this song. And yes, guess what? It ties to Guatemala. I'm telling you, if you can ever get the chance to go, I know y'all probably heard all you want to hear about missions, but it ain't over. Once you get it in your soul, Paul will tell you, he'd come up here he just did to Brother Hanks. Woo, and just, it's amazing. And it truly is. It's something that is life transforming to see the people and the move of them when you do something for them. But I'm one of those people, Lisa will probably tell you, I like to grumble a little bit over the dumbest of things. You ever find yourself doing that? Grumbling and gripe over just stupid stuff? Go to Guatemala and get a real good understanding of how well off we are, and you can get a whole lot better grip on whether or not you ought to be grumbling about some of the things we grumble about in this life here in America. We've got it made. But this song, and you'll know the song when I read you these words, but it says, Lord, help me not to grumble and complain about the tough roads that I've heard folks tell you, we ain't heard no tough roads. We've had it made. But then it goes on more than that, and this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where it really hit home with me. When it talks about, Lord, help me to never be too busy to help another bear his load. I told you my testimony last Sunday morning after the Guatemala trip. A lot more to it than what we see inside these four walls. A lot more to it. There's people out there, guess what? They need help to bear their load. They need help just to make it day by day. So my prayer is what this song talks about. Lord, help me not to grumble and complain. Lord, help me never to be too busy to help somebody when they need a helping hand, to help somebody when they need somebody to help bear their load, because it's just become too much for them. But on top of that, this song says, I'm drinking from my saucer. Because guess why? Because my cup has overflowed. Guatemala filled my cup. It was amazing. We just talked about this, the angels singing there, that meeting in the air. We got a small taste of that Friday night in Guatemala when we got ready to leave. We got a small taste of what it's going to be like to be gathered around the throne and the angels singing, and us just, oh, man, just what an awesome time. But worship the Lord tonight. It's not about how I sing it, but I felt this song. The devil tried to fight me. I'm not hardly ever nervous. Been doing this a long time. I sat right there on that pew and just almost felt jittery coming. And I prayed. I said, Lord, I'm not going to let the devil do this. I'm not going to let him steal. I said, Lord, you must have something in store tonight because the devil's trying to stop me from doing this. And I'm not going to give him that honor tonight. I'm going to worship the Lord, and I want you to worship with me and just give him glory and praise. That's what it's about. Just praise him. Thank him. You got a reason to thank him. Trust me. You got a reason to lift your hand and say, thank you, Lord, tonight. Amen. Worship the Lord. Should be number 2, Paul. Oh, it's probably too late now. Oh, but now don't worry about that much. I'm happy anyhow. As I go along life's journey, reaping better than I sowed. I'm drinking from my saucer, 'cause my cup has overflowed. Ain't got a lot of riches. Sometimes the going's rough, but I've got a friend in Jesus that makes me rich enough. I thank God for all His blessings on me and the mercy He's bestowed. I'm drinking from my saucer, 'cause my cup has overflowed. Oh, sure, I've been through some storms, and there were times, I have to admit, that my faith must have got a little dim. But you know what? It seemed like one day, all at once, those old dark clouds broke, and that old sun started shining again. So, Lord, help me not to grumble and complain about the tough roads I have I'm drinking from my saucer, 'cause my cup has overflowed. If I should go on living, if the way gets steep and rough, I won't ask for other blessings, 'cause I'm already blessed enough. May I never be too busy to help another bear his load. Keep drinking from my saucer, 'cause my cup has overflowed. I'll keep drinking from my saucer, Lord, 'cause my cup has overflowed. My cup has overflowed.
We worship you tonight. Hallelujah. We honor you and praise you and thank you, dear Lord, for your grace and your mercy and your love. Amen. It's good to be drinking from your saucer because your cup is overflowing, that's for sure. Amen. Thankful for the goodness of the Lord tonight. Thankful for His sweet Spirit that I feel in this place this evening. He's so good to us. He's so faithful to us. And I appreciate each one that has testified about Guatemala over the last couple of weeks. And I was just telling Noah this afternoon, just so proud of him. I said, man, you had a good pulpit presence there. And I've always prayed, Lord, don't let him be a preacher. But if that's God's calling upon either one of my kids' lives, I've always figured that Gracie would be the preacher above the two. But whatever the Lord has, whatever calling. But I appreciate each one that shared their hearts and just shared with us. And, of course, the last two today was very special to me to see my son and my wife up here standing behind this pulpit sharing their hearts. That just means the world. When you invest and you put that in them, I pretty much, I guess, raised Amy in her Christian walk. She was a newborn Christian when her and I met. And she didn't really realize, I don't think, everything she was signing up for. But I'm thankful for the woman of God that she's become over the last 18 years, and so thankful to have her by my side in ministry and see what Noah's, how God is blessing and touching Noah, and him talking about being grateful this morning, and that he just shared with us from his heart. And I hadn't heard Brother George sing in a while with his soundtracks. Like you said, he's been singing with them, so it's been a good week because I've got to hear Brother George and Noah sing this week. I haven't heard either one of them sing in a while, but Noah sung Wednesday morning at camp meeting, Brother George tonight. Two of my favorite singers, and I just appreciate them so much. I had Brother George's CD that he had cut, and I wore that thing out when I was in Oklahoma. Listened to it quite often. I've always enjoyed that particular song for sure, and I'm just thankful for ministry and the ministry of our church, and just appreciate everyone and what you're doing for the Lord. We want to look again this evening in the book of 1 Peter. We're going to continue on, but we're getting a little bit further into it this evening. We're going to start with verse number 13. We left off last week and speaking there through verses 5 and 6, and we're going to skip forward just a little bit tonight. Like I said, we're going to talk about the coming of the Lord. The title of tonight's message is The Coming Grace of God. And everything that has been said, it seems, in this service tonight is an anticipation of the soon coming of the Lord. And as I shared I believe I shared it Wednesday night, that we hear a lot of talk about a great falling away, and so people think, well, it's just the way it is. The church attendance is going to be down. Nobody's going to do anything for the Lord. But we also hear of a great latter-day outpouring, a great revival. And I'm no theologian. I probably should be, being an ordained minister, but to know that there's both those two things, you get the question all the time, which will it be, Pastor, a great falling away or a great revival? You know what I say? It's your choice. It's your choice. You'll fall away if you want to, and you'll have revival if you want to. But I can guarantee if you choose to have revival, somebody else will too. If you'll make that move towards God and submit yourself to the will of God, it will impact and it will touch others. And I'm thankful that we have that privilege to be able to serve the Lord. And I'm looking for His soon appearing. I love my life here. I love my position and my calling as pastor. I love my position as husband and my position as dad. Every title I hold, I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful and I'm blessed. Got so much to be thankful here for. But as we shared early on in this series that we're talking about here in 1 Peter, it's kind of a series, but it's a bunch of messages from 1 Peter is what it is. But early on in this, we talked about being pilgrims and strangers. No matter how good life here is, I just can't seem to feel at home in this world. Why? Because I'm just a pilgrim. I'm just passing through. My citizenship may be here in America, but I've got a calling and election that's been set. I've laid up for myself treasures. I don't have a lot of investments here. I don't have anything against those that have stocks and bonds and savings accounts and all that. More power to you. I've got a little bit of retirement that I'm working on, maybe one day to retire, but I don't have anything of any monetary value really to lay up here. But I've laid it all up, laid all of my treasures up in heaven. One of my favorite scriptures very on in this walk was, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And my treasure is found in heaven. That's why I long for that place. So I want to talk to you tonight about that coming grace of God, found in 1 Peter chapter 1, beginning in verse 13. It says, "Wherefore, gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to the end for the grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, not fashioning yourselves according to the former lust in your ignorance, but as He which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation, because it is written, Be ye holy, for I am holy." Here in this year of Revelation, our text is telling us tonight there in verse 13 that the end of grace that is brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ, that we as obedient children not fashion ourselves according to the former lust in our ignorance. We was ignorant when we walked in the trespass of sin. We were dead men walking, but thank God that we've been called out of darkness into His marvelous light, and know that He has called us. The one that has called us is holy, and so we can be holy in all manner of conversation. Be ye holy, for I am holy. We're going to talk tonight about the coming grace of God. Let's stretch our hands towards heaven tonight. Let's just ask God to rain down upon us and speak to us this evening and have His way in our hearts and our lives tonight. Father, we're grateful to You for this great privilege that we have to be back in Your house tonight. And we just yield ourselves to Your will and Your way, Your purpose and Your plan tonight. And we just pray, Holy Ghost of heaven, have Your way in this service this evening, God. I'm submitted to You. I'm surrendered to You, yielded to You. Use me, turn me every which way but loose tonight. I pray, God, that You'd anoint me to preach as a man from another planet, God. I pray, Lamb of God, that heaven would reach down and touch earth tonight, God, and that we would experience that outpouring of the Holy Ghost and fire. Give us revelation. Give us guidance. Give us direction. Speak to hearts and speak to lives. To know that You're soon to come back for Your church. And I want to be found ready. I don't want to only be getting ready, but I want to be able to say, I'm already ready. I've made my call and my election sure. I've laid up for myself treasures in that place. We're longing for that place that You prepared for us. And our prayer tonight, Lord, is not wait a little longer, but our prayer tonight is even so come quickly. Lord Jesus. The longing of our heart is for that place that You prepared for us. And Lord, I pray that all would be ready. If they're not ready, they'll be ready before they leave here tonight. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. You may be seated this evening. In the first part of this chapter, Peter emphasizes walking in hope. We talked a lot about that over the last several weeks. He said he began to talk to them and he began to write to them, and he talked to those that were scattered, those that were in bondage, and those that were, he remembered the three things that he told them. Remember who you are and what you are and what your purpose is and why you are here. So he reminded them, though they're scattered, they still have a purpose. And though they may seem that they have got the short end of the stick, and it seems like they're here, and you may feel that way, that you feel like you're here in a place, that you feel scattered, that you feel like God has forsaken you, to know that the enemy cannot have the upper hand on you. The enemy can only come so far. I take great comfort, Sister Gilda, in knowing if the devil's in my face, God had to give him access, Brother Brian, to get there. He had to give him access. So we think about Job. He said, have you considered my servant Job? So when the devil steps up in your face, when he steps up in your front porch, when he gets up in your face, know that God had a conversation with him, and he said, have you considered my servant? And insert your name there. So many times we want to panic, but to know there's nothing that came to you that didn't come through him, and either you're submitted to God or you're not submitted to God, and you know that God is able to keep that which you've committed to him against that day. So he reminded them, yeah, they were scattered. Yes, they were going through trials. And yes, things did not look great all the time for them. But Peter reminds them that God has everything under control. And they have to do, all they have to do is put their faith and their trust in him and keep the faith. That's their hope. They had something to hope for. It's the same with us tonight. You may feel scattered. You may feel like trials and tribulations have come your way. You may feel like that things are not going the way that they're supposed to, but you can take great comfort in knowing tonight that God's got everything under control. That God is bigger than your situation. God is bigger than your circumstance. God is bigger than your trial. That He is faithful as promised. That He's not a man that He should lie. That He's not slack concerning His promises. That He is a God of hope. Keep the faith, child of God. There is hope. You too have something to hope for. In this section that we began tonight, the second half of this first chapter of 1 Peter, Peter begins here talking about walking, not just in hope. He talked about walking in hope in the first half, but then this second half he talks about walking in holiness. They had a blessed hope. Now they needed a lifestyle to match their hope. We've got a blessed hope. We talked about in our Sunday school class this morning about this great salvation. And salvation is not limited to an encounter at the altar where your sins were washed away. That was the beginning of salvation. And salvation plays itself out and walks it out throughout our lives. So hope started there. Hope started, we have this blessed hope. And now we need a lifestyle to match our hope. We don't live like those that grope in darkness. We don't live like those that have no hope. We have a hope. It's settled. We have a hope that causes us to walk differently, to live differently, to trust when it seems like there's nothing to trust in, because we know that we're submitted to God. Peter's doing his best in writing this book. He's doing everything that he can to prepare them that have been scattered, who have found themselves all over the place. We named all the places there in 1 Peter 1, and they were scattered and they were strangers in that land, and he's doing his very best to encourage them, to prepare them for the coming of the Lord, and he gives them some guidelines that will help them to be ready. And as a pastor, that's what I've been trying to do. Over 6 years, heading into 7 years now here at Middleburg. And before I came here, 3 years at Broken Bow and at Garden City. And in my time as a youth pastor, and as an evangelist, that's what I've been trying to do. But my endeavor here for the last 6.5 years, for those who've been under my care and under my guidance and under the direction that God has placed for me to be pastor of this church, I've been trying to do the same thing. Been doing our best to prepare you for the coming of the Lord. I've been doing everything that we can. Why do you preach the way you preach, Pastor? Because I'm doing everything I can to make sure that you're ready for the coming of the Lord. It's not about getting a pat on the back all the time. It was a good feeling this morning in prayer meeting. I came in here and I just knelt down, and about time I was getting ready to finish up prayer, I felt several hands on my back. Several. I don't even know who all it was, but several just gathered around and began to pray for me. That's a wonderful feeling to know that you're encouraging others week after week, and they're praying that God would encourage you. And I heard as they begin to pray, lead him as he leads us, that we may be able to make it together is the desire. So I'm doing my very best, just as Peter was, to prepare you for the coming of the Lord. But sometimes, not so sure I'm making very much progress with some of you. It's reality. Don't feel like we're making a whole lot of progress with some. But you know what we do? We keep encouraging. We keep preaching. We keep teaching. We keep working. We keep discipling. We keep loving. We keep forgiving. You know, there's many that will bite the hand that feeds them. You know what you have to do as a pastor? You keep loving them. You want to slap them upside the head, but you just keep loving them. You keep feeding them. You keep giving them the word. So there's some things that we have to look at, and there's some things that we have to do that Peter told them, and it will be very effective for us if we could take them to heart tonight, if we're going to be ready for Jesus' soon return. I believe he's coming back, just like he said. I still believe in the rapture. I still believe in the coming of the Lord. I still believe in that coming grace, that it's going to soon be over. Signs of the time line up to it. If we're going to be ready for his soon appearing, and if we're truly getting ready, there's some things that we've got to do to get ready. First thing Peter says is we're going to have to gird up the loins of our mind. What does that mean? Never forget this. This is what it means. Understand this, that right thinking produces right living. If you're going to live right, you got to first think right. If you got a messed up mind, you'll have a messed up life. And it just goes hand in hand. The reason many folks don't live right is simply because they don't think right. The biggest battle, I told you just a few services ago, that we have is right between these ears. It's the battle of the mind. And when we're not thinking right, I remember years ago I was being a punk, and I was just being rude and being disrespectful to my dad. If now the tides were changed and Noah was doing what I did that day, I would knock his block off. I would. It would be more than getting grounded. I'd take that belt out that I hadn't had to take out in many years, and I would have wore him out, 16 or not. I was about Noah's age, and I don't know why my dad did not do that. I can tell you tonight, my dad has never whipped me. Never. Not with a switch, not with a belt, not with his hand. Never is my dad with me, but my stepdad tore me up. But my dad, for some reason, that day he did not tear me up when he probably should have. But he just simply looked at me, and Brother Steve, I think I'd rather him took off the belt and got the switch after me. But he just looked at me through that door of my bedroom. I'm sitting there on the floor, and I'm fuming. And my dad looks at me and said, "Son, you need to get your head on straight." Of course, I mumbled back to him, "My head's where it needs to be," or something like that. But the problem with Jamie at that point is I was thinking wrong. The problem was with me was I thought I had it all figured out. I didn't need Daddy's rules. I didn't need Daddy's God. I didn't need Daddy's church services. I didn't need any of that. I could live my life. By the way, I was 16, so I was grown. I was already taking care of myself, and I felt I was just giving my dad a chance and doing him a favor, even being there. I'd have been better off. In my mind, I felt I'd be better off on my own. But when I took that track and found myself going deeper into alcohol, deeper into the things of this world, I realized that I had some wrong thinking, and wrong thinking led me to wrong living. Wrong thinking led me to stealing from my employer. Wrong thinking led me to, in that stealing, you won't believe this, I know, but the pastor, before he got saved, just being very transparent, wrong thinking led me to stealing a pint of Mad Dog 2020. Anybody know what that is? Rock gut liquor. And drinking that Mad Dog 2020. And you know what wrong thinking did? It left me laying by the railroad tracks, passed out, not knowing how I got there, and not knowing how I ended up there. So wrong thinking led to wrong living, and it could have left me in a path of total destruction and despair. God could have let me die in that condition, but thank God for grace. Thank God for a praying daddy. Thank God for a praying stepmom. Thank God for His grace. Thank God that when my dad was telling me to get my head on right, that he didn't just stop with pointing his finger at me and saying, "Get yourself straight, boy." But what he did is he went back there in that shed where his altar was at and fell across that altar. When I came to my dad and said, "I don't need your church, I don't need your God, I'm going on my own, I'm moving out, I'm going away," I remember that day that I walked out the door and said, "I will not do it." My dad looked at me and said, "If I could, I'd tie you up and put you here and keep you here, but I can't do that. You've got to make your own choices." And wrong thinking led me out that door and down that road. That's what wrong thinking did. But what the grace of God did is brought me to the door of that church on a Sunday night, and standing there with my ear to the door, a little church out in Ocean Way was called Sterrett Road Church of God. My dad was the pastor of. I was supposed to be well on my way to Alabama. But I remember stepping up on the porch of that small church and hearing my dad say from the pulpit, "Pray for my son. Pray for my son. He's not thinking right. He's in the valley of decision." That's what I heard him say. I look back on it and I say, "Dad, I wasn't in the valley of decision. I was backslid. I was so far away from where I needed to be." But because of His love and because of His compassion, because of His grace, I was able to walk in the doors of that church that night, fall across that altar, and get my thinking right. But I'm telling you tonight from experience that right thinking produces right living, but wrong thinking will produce destructive living. Many folks don't live right because of that. Peter says that there is a resolve to that. In our text, he tells us that we need to gird up the loins of our mind. There are three things that we need to know about our mind. Number one, we should have a disciplined mind. To gird up the loins means to pull your thoughts together, or to have a disciplined mind. Peter said in another place this way, "Let this mind be in you also, which was in Christ Jesus our Lord." To have the mind of God, the mind of Christ. We're created in the image and the likeness of God. We're to think like God. We're to have the heart of God. So in this picture, we see it's the picture picture of someone in Peter's day that they had this long outer garment. And when they got ready to run or walk fast, that garment would hinder them. So they would take up that garment and they would pull it up. They would tuck it in their belt. And then they would head out into a sprint. If they tried to run without doing that, many of you ladies that wear long skirts realize if you're going to cut out in a run, you want to make sure that you've got something underneath that dress or that skirt, but you're going to pull it up, you're going to gird it up, and you're going to take off running. Like, for instance, if you're working out in the yard and a snake pops up, you're going to gird up your loins, and you're going to take off running. And so that's the image that Peter's trying to get in our mind. That we don't want to trip or fall. So how we think can hinder our progress or cause us to fall spiritually. So we need to have a disciplined mind. A mind that is brought under subjection to the Spirit. So that means that we've got to be very careful. Very careful what we let enter into our mind. The oldest recording, camcorder if you will, the oldest computer is the mind. I don't know about you, but I can smell a smell and it'll take me back 30, 40 years. Just, I can see an image and it'll take me back to a time. It's like a camera is being played in front of my eyes. So we begin to think that. So we got to be careful what we put in our mind because the mind's going to record it. And when that mind records it, the devil loves hit and replay. The devil loves to replay images that you were not supposed to see. When you take and you flip the channels and you linger there a little bit too long, the devil loves to stick that in your mind. When you're flipping through a magazine and it's an image that you was not supposed to see, the devil loves to keep that stuck in your mind, and he'll bring it back, and he brings it back so he can use it to hurt you. That's why television can be very damaging, very dangerous. Thousands of hours of violence and sex and homosexuality and lying and cheating and stealing. It'll take a toll on your mind. You will become so desensitized to evil, and that's what's happened today to our generation. They sit in front of game consoles and play video games where they have guns and they're shooting people and they're stealing people's cars. And it's just the game, they'll say. They're not really, it's not really hurting anybody. It's just the game, or it's just the movie, or it's just a show, or it's just a song. Those things begin to get stuck in the mind, in the subconscious, and it begins to come back. So we've got to be very careful. If we're not careful, we'll become desensitized to the evil things that's happening in this generation. Today, very few of our young people really have a concept of sin. They look at fornication as nothing. They look at adultery as not so bad. They look at homosexuality as been put in our face. What amazes me about homosexuality is less, from what I've heard statistics, less than 3% of the population of America are homosexuals. Less than 3%. But what's always in your face? And we say, I'm not going to buy that product. I'm not going to stay in that place. Before long, we're going to be sleeping in a tent on the side of the road, just drinking water out of a rock. Because it's everywhere. Every commercial. I've seen commercials come on TV. A hotel that many of you have probably stayed in. How many's ever stayed in a Holiday Inn? I was watching a commercial with a Holiday Inn the other day, and what do they use in their commercial? 2 homosexuals. It's just put in our face, and what it's endeavoring to do is desensitize us to the fact and say everybody has a choice, and we got to treat everyone equally. I told you last week, I love all of them. It doesn't matter to me if they're male, female, transgender, if they think they're a dog, or if they think they're a cat. It does not matter who they think they are and what they think they are. I love them, and I'll give them the gospel. We owe them the gospel, church. We owe them the love of Jesus. We owe them to treat them with respect, but I don't have to embrace their sin. I don't have to be desensitized to it, that I embrace their evil and say, it's okay, and coddle over it and sugarcoat it. We still have to stand for the truths of God's Word and say black is black and white is white. Evil is evil and good is good. And to know the truth will still set you free. And understand something, none of those things are normal for the child of God. There's no such thing as a homosexual Christian. Period. I said this, I was preaching one night in a church. I don't know who it was for, had nothing to do with my message, but I said, if you're shacking, send them packing. Because there's no place for that in the kingdom of God. You cannot be a child of God and shacking up. You got to be married. If you're living in the same house under the same roof, that's just the way it is. You can't go and do the things and begin to have, and I want to be very careful. There's kids in here tonight, but you've got to be very careful when you're dating where you put your hands. Let's just put it that way. And you've got to be very careful in how you show your affections, because there's no place for that in the children of God and the child of God. Wrong thinking will lead to wrong living, will cause you to make mistakes. So you've got to discipline your mind, and you've got to protect your mind. They have been so brainwashed by the public school system, by the media, and by many preachers even, that they don't even look at sin like God looks at sin. Sin still appalls God. He still turns His back on sin. Do you know what was the most horrible thing about Jesus going to the cross for the Father? Is that He became sin, and the Father had to turn His back on the Son. If He turned His back on His only begotten Son because He became sin, what do you think He's going to do now? We can't sugarcoat sin. We can't embrace sin. We can't take, and Brother Marshall Adcock preached a message on the python, about a python that someone had as a pet, and that python, as they were sleeping at night, that python began to stretch out beside them on the bed. They were trying to figure out what was going on. And so they went to the vet and told him about this. They said, get rid of it because it's measuring you up. It's measuring you up, that it's going to take and it's going to devour you. It's my pet. So we can't play with sin. We can't play with the snake. We can't play with the things of this world. We've got to gird the loins of our mind and keep our minds protected. I told you this morning I was going to share with you some statistics about our young people. And here it is. One statistic says that 75%, 3/4 of our kids will drop out of church between the age of 17 and 25. You know the reason for that? They gave a lot of reasons. Plenty of reasons, but the main reason was they thought the preaching was outdated and irrelevant to the times. You know what that is? It's a cop-out. It's a cop-out. The real problem is that they don't like the truth, and they don't want someone to tell them how they need to live their lives. I know, because I was there. Nobody's going to tell me how to live. I'm grown. I'll do what I want to do. I remember having that conversation. It may work for you, but it's not for me. Many get that mindset and they think, man, I've got to go out and experience this world for myself, and I've got to live it up. I'm telling you that we can save you a lot of trouble if you just listen to us, but many won't listen. Maybe that's why Jesus lamented in Luke 18:8 when He said, nevertheless, when the Son of Man cometh, shall He find faith on the earth? Will He find faith on the earth? Will there be any faith left on this earth? We have watered down, sugar-coated, and played around with the gospel message. Came out with so many versions of the Bible, trying to make it easier to swallow, trying to make it easier to take in. They've taken different versions and said, well, that's offensive. We want to take that out. To versions that make God a female, to versions that take and add modern-day language to bring disrespect to God, to take away from the deity of God. All of these things have been done in an effort to water down the gospel. But so much of this is taking place that it doesn't even look anything like the gospel anymore. There was those that hazarded their lives for the gospel. There was those, Stephen, that was a martyr for this gospel. Is this the same gospel that he died a martyr of? God still demands. Understand that. He is a God of love. But we got to get a hold of this tonight. God still demands that we love Him with all of our heart. The command is still the same. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy mind, and all of thy strength. That's still the command of God. He still demands that we keep His commandments. It's the Ten Commandments, not the 10 suggestions. He is still, and to understand something, there's a whole lot more than 10 commandments. I've told people many times, that's just the top 10 list. He has a lot of commandments. He said, if you love me, do what? Keep my commandments. He still demands that we be different than the world. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. Nobody wants to talk about that anymore. You're being fanatical. You're trying to tell me how to dress and trying to tell me how to appear. They love to use that scripture, and they take it from when David was chosen to be king, when Samuel went down to Jesse's house looking for the king, and he looked on his brothers, and he said, none of these are it. And he made the statement there that man looks on the outward, but God looks on the heart. Many people love to use that verse out of context and make that statement that I can look however I want to look, dress however I want to dress, and act however I want to act, and nobody should hold me accountable for it. That's not what the Scripture's saying. It's talking about the stature of his brothers, that they look like warriors. They look like they should be kings. They had muscles upon muscles. They were skilled in being warriors, and to know that David didn't have any of that. He didn't have any of those muscles, any of that skill, any of that ability. He was on the backside of the shepherd's field, taking care of sheep, smelling like sheep, just a ruddy youth. But his heart was more towards God than any of his brothers that had the look and had the outward appearance, but did not have the heart. So many people want to take that and use that and say, well, I don't have to be any different than the world. You know what? We can't afford to water it down. I refuse to water it down. I refuse to sugarcoat it. 20-something years of ministry, I've never sugarcoated the gospel. Never watered down the gospel. I'm still a firm believer in the King James Version of the Bible. I still believe in singing the old hymns, and I still believe in preaching on the blood and the rapture. I still believe in those things. And I'm not going to cater to sin, not going to water down sin. I'm going to love the sinner, but I'm going to tell them the truth. Whether it's my family, your family, no matter who it is, that must be our desire. We've got to gird the loins of our mind. But I also want to be like Paul said, I don't want to preach to others and find myself a castaway. To say, I'm not going to water it down and sugarcoat it for you, but I'm going to water it down and sugarcoat it for me. No, it don't work that way. I have to hold myself to the same standard at which I preach. And that's what drives us to the altar. That's what keeps us in a prayer closet. Number two, we should have a sober mind. He said, and be sober. That word here means to be calm, to be steady, to be controlled, to weigh out all the matters. You've got to have a sober mind. Too many people do not have that kind of mind. They're not settled. They're not in that place that they've settled in all matters. They're not calm. They're not steady. They do not have a controlled thinking. But because they are not, the spiritual life begins to suffer because of it. You know what they are? They're up or they're down. They're in and they're out. They're on fire one week and cold as cold can be the next week. They get off on tangents and they follow after every wind of doctrine that blows. Begin to do bizarre things and chase after bizarre things. They take everything as truth. They try to find the best in everything. I get that. You need to find the good in stuff. But there's just certain things that you have to avoid. I've been known to name televangelists from the pulpit before and say, stay away from them. It hadn't been popular. One day a lady came to me at my church. I had only been there a short time, and she said, Pastor, she was excited. She said, I've got 10 tickets here for Benny Hinn. He's going to be in Dallas, Texas. I got 10 tickets to give to you and your family to go. I said, sis, I wouldn't walk across the street to hear that man preach. She backed up and she looked at me. I said, what in the world? I said, he doesn't preach the truth. He waters it down. He makes God's word a mockery. He makes it entertainment. He makes it about him. He's been exposed. He's been uncovered so many times. So we have to be careful what we put in this mind. We say, well, it's spiritual. It's godly. We have to know right from wrong. We have to know. And many times people will follow after the bizarre and go out on these tangents. And God does not desire or want us to be that way. You don't have to be in and out. You don't have to get saved every revival. You don't have to be up and down, hot one day, cold the next. You don't have to get off on wild tangents and chase after these things and chase after the new thing that's coming down the block. You don't have to go for the new scene. You don't have to change up everything in your church because everybody else is changing up everything in their church. You don't have to go by the new trend that says this is how you're going to draw the crowd. If the Holy Ghost is not enough, we're in trouble. If the convicting power of God is not enough, if we're not careful, we'll have a three-ring circus. We'll have circus clowns, and we'll have all of the ones that's entertaining, and the platform will become a place to entertain. And we'll get the latest one that can tickle the ears and can motivate and make you feel good about who you are. No, what we need is a gospel that says who you are needs to die at an altar and die out to the Lord and say, I want my mind renewed. I want my heart renewed. And I want to be found firm and controlled and calm and steady in the work of the Lord. Another reason you need to be sober is because the devil is on the rampage. He knows his time's running out, church. He knows, as we're looking for the rapture, he knows the rapture's about to take place. So John 10:10 tells us he's doing what he can to steal, kill, and destroy. He's out. Peter wrote it this way in chapter 5, 1 Peter verse 8. He warned us, and I try to warn you this often, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Ladies, I know that text message you get is important. I understand that keeping up with friends on social media is important. But it's been said, we see it so many times, that when you enter a parking lot, don't step out of the grocery store with a baby on your hip and your cell phone looking down, pushing your cart, not aware of your surroundings. Young people, don't. I tell my kids all the time, in a parking lot, head on a swivel. Because you never know who's going to pull out around that corner. You never know who is paying attention and who's not paying attention, or who is out there. We think so many times, it can never happen to me. We was talking about this at lunch the other day, human trafficking that's going on, and there's someone that we were all connected with. They had posted on Facebook that they were one of those that said it could never happen to me, and they were at the park, and they had their baby, and a stranger came up there and began to admire the baby, and said before they knew it, they had their hands on the baby and had the baby in their hands, and did not even realize how quick that it could happen. And if they wouldn't have responded quickly, they could have took off with their child just that quick. We've got to be sober and be vigilant. There's evil people in this world. Not everybody's good. We have to be careful even in church, not just because they come to church. We think, I'm going to go to church, find me a husband. I'm going to go to church and find me a wife. We've got to be very careful. We've got to be sober. We've got to be vigilant. We've got to be in the Word of God. We've got to be in prayer and know that bad people still go to church. The devil goes to church more than some proclaiming and professing Christians. So we have to be very careful of that. Be sober, be vigilant, because he's walking about seeking whom he may devour. The devil would love to devour you. Jesus told him, said, listen, he desires to have you and sift you as wheat. But if you keep your mind on God and the things of God, he cannot touch you. Number 3, we should have an optimistic mind. Hope to the end. We should have a hopeful mindset. That word hope is found 129 times in the only version of the Bible I read, the King James Version. In Hebrews 6:19 we read, which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast. Understand something about hope. Hope is our anchor in troublesome times. I was visiting with Michael yesterday there at the retirement home where he stays, and he wanted to show me, he had talked a lot about their gym room, so we went up there and he was showing me that. And there was one of those little weights that's got the handle on it, and they was using it as a door stop. And it was up against that door, and he said, pick that up. So I picked that up and I showed it to him, and he said, I said, it's 15 pounds, Michael. He said, that'd make a good anchor. That'd make a good, he said, you just throw that over and it'd make a good anchor. We may not have that kind of anchor, but to understand something, we have a hope, which is an anchor of our soul. It's both sure and steadfast. So when troublesome times come, when storm comes, we have that anchor. It's called a blessed hope in Titus 2 and 13. Paul tells us in Hebrews 6:18 that we're to lay a hold upon the hope that is set before us. So to lay a hold upon it means to strengthen or to seize or to retain. Hold on to it with all that is within us. My pastor used to tell us, get a bulldog grip on the altar. Don't let go. Take hold of that hope. 1 Timothy 6 and 12 tells us that we need to fight the good fight of faith. Lay hold on eternal life, wherein also they are called. So with all the strength that we have, we need to hold on to our hope. Lay hold to eternal life. Peter says this, we need to do it all the way to the end. All the way to the end. It's not over. We can't afford to get complacent. We can't afford to sit at ease in Zion. We can't afford to sit on the church pew and say, We can't afford to do that because the devil never stops. He never stops. He's relentless. He's on the rampage. He's coming against our families. He's coming against our minds. He's coming against us from every angle. We need to understand that in God's times of refreshing, He'll give us the refreshing, but we've got to hold fast to that hope until the end. It's our only hope, our only strength. So Peter's telling us that we need to hold on to that hope all the way to the sounding of the trumpet. That's endurance. Understand something. That this is a marathon, not a 50-yard dash. It's an endurance run. We've got to keep the faith, keep the pace, keep running. He said, lay aside every weight and every sin that does so easily beset you and run the race with patience. Set the pace, keep the pace, and run with everything that God gives you. So don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. Trust in God. He will see you through. We can't say that enough. It may sound like a broken record, but it has to be repeated week after week. We have to be reminded. We have to be encouraged. Peter's encouraging them, and we're encouraging each other tonight. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. Trust God. Either you trust God or you don't, but know that God will see you through. Know something. If I hold fast to the profession of my faith, God will see me through. I've got to keep the faith. I can't lose heart. Always remember when the outlook is gloomy that we need to try something else. He said when all of these things take place, what does He tell us to do? Signs of the times around us. What did He tell them in the Old Testament? He said, you've compassed this mountain long enough. Look ye northward. So when the outlook is gloomy, when circumstances and situations and the news reports got you down and the signs of the times gives you a gloomy report, don't look around you. Church, it's not time to look around us. But it's time to look up and to know that our redemption draweth nigh, the coming grace of God. He said, when you see all of these things come to pass, look up and know that we're just about done. So the outlook may be gloomy. The report may have not been good from the doctor, the lawyer, the banker, whoever you were looking for an answer from. But understand something. You can look unto Jesus, the author and the finisher, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, and to know that He will never lead you astray. That's what He tells us in Hebrews 12 and 2. Look unto Him, the author and the finisher of our faith. He's not just the author. I preached one time that He's also the editor. Aren't you thankful that He made some edits in our lives? He's not just the author or the beginner of our faith. He's not just the Alpha, but He's also the Omega. He's not just the beginning. He is the end. He is the finisher. If we keep the right mindset, then Peter said that we would not be disappointed. If you don't have the right mindset, you're going to stay disappointed. So once again, let's look at it backwards. If you've got a lot of disappointments, check out your mindset. You're looking too much at the outlook. It's time to change and look to the uplook and understand that we would receive the grace of God when Jesus comes back. To understand if we'll keep the right mindset that Peter said, that we would not be disappointed, but we would receive the grace of God when He comes back again. the coming of the Lord, the rapture of the church. You know what's going to take place in the coming of the Lord? The coming of the Lord will take care of all of our problems. You got problems? The coming of the Lord's going to take care of that. The coming of the Lord will take care of all our persecution. Coming of the Lord will take care of all of our heartaches, all of our troubles, and all of our trials. No wonder Paul called it a blessed hope. We have a blessed hope in the coming grace of God. To know that we have something to look forward to. A land with no problems. A land with no persecution. A land with no heartaches. A land with no troubles. A land with no trials. A land with no sin. Somebody wrote a song, said, imagine, if you will, a land with no crying. No more hungry children. No more babies crying. What a place that's going to be. And God said, I go to prepare this place for you. We have a hope, church. Peter also tells us that we've got to be ready for Jesus. And if we're going to be ready for Jesus, we have to be obedient children. The analogy here is simple. It's logical. Children inherit the nature of their parents. Somebody I used to pastor saw a picture of Noah and I not too long ago, and they said, you marked that boy up good. You marked him up good. We take on the nature of our parents. How many times have you heard the expression, not just in physical, but in the responses, in the temperament? How many have ever heard this? They're stubborn, just as stubborn as their mama or daddy. Just as hard-headed, just as stubborn as their daddy or their mama. To know that we, as born-again Christians, we get a new nature. So many times we want to say, well, I'm a Wyatt, and that's just the way the Wyatts do. That's just my nature. But what happens when you're born again is that old man is dead. So I don't care if you're a Wyatt, whatever your last name is. I'll use some of the names attached to my family. Whether you're a Wyatt, a Thompson, a Drury, or any of those things, it does not matter. I can't stake claim to say, well, I'm this way because my daddy was that way and his daddy was that way, and it's just in my nature. No, when you've been born again, old things passed away, all things become new. And just because your daddy was an alcoholic does not mean you have to be an alcoholic. Just because your granddaddy was a jerk doesn't mean you have to be a jerk. Just because that they may have been out there in this world an adulterer and a fornicator, and we say, I have no choice. It's just in my blood. I don't have any choice in the matter. When you've been born again, you lay down that old nature, that fleshly nature, and you take on God's nature. I'm His son. I'm His daughter. I'm His child. I've been created in His likeness, in His image, and we walk in faith and trust in Him, and we believe in Him. He created us in His likeness, in His image, and He has created us to live that life, not after natural man, but after God's nature. One thing that God expects out of His children, you should expect out of yours too, is obedience. It's obedience. That was a rule set in the house when I was coming up. You obey me or you move out. I believe first time I was told I had to move out was about 9 years old. You can't obey, get out. I remember telling my mom one time, I'm calling child abuse on you. I didn't even know what child abuse was. And she flipped me a quarter. Here, call them. Call them. As long as you live under my roof, it's my rules. And you know what God says? It's my way or the highway. But you know what God says? My way is the highway. It's a highway of holiness that we have to walk in, that we have to abide in, that we have to live in. So somehow it seems that the modern day church just don't get that. Modern Christians are in the mode of trying to obey God. Too many people are not trying to keep God's commandments. They're too focused on the mode of seeing just how close to the world that they can get and still be considered a Christian. How close can I live to the world and still make it to heaven? That shouldn't be the question. The question should be is how close that I can get to God, that I can make a difference in this world, that I can make an impact on society, that I can see others delivered and set free and changed to be the best presentation of the gospel that I can be. Too many are trying to see how close they can live to the world and still be called a Christian. That was Lot's mindset. There's too many Lots in the church today. We need more Abrahams. You know what was said about Abraham? Abraham was a friend of God.
Abraham built an altar everywhere he went. He communed with God. He had relationship with God. He believed God. It was imputed to him as righteousness. He was called the friend of God. He was more concerned with what God thought. He was more concerned with the things of God. That was the things that he was interested in, not the things of the world. But then he had this nephew, not Lot. Here's Lot. It never said about Lot that he was a friend of God or he communed with God. You never see where Lot built an altar, but you did see where Abraham had to get together. I never knew that Abraham had an army until Lot decided to pitch his tent toward Sodom. Then he had to round up the army and take them to rescue Lot, because Lot chose to believe the things and go after the things of the world. It said of Lot, that Lot vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. Too many within the church are more like Lot than Abraham, unfortunately. They're vexing their soul day by day with the unlawful deeds of this world, not thinking anything of it. Lot pitched his tent toward Sodom, eventually ended up right in the middle of Sodom. He left Abraham in the mountainous terrain to try and feed his flocks, and he took the best land for himself. He was selfish, but Abraham didn't care. Why? Because Abraham had more interest in God. He had more interest in God than having the good pasture. He had more interest in God than having the best land. Matter of fact, he told Lot, you take what you want, I'll take the rest. Why? Because he knew that God would supply his need. He knew that he had already heard the voice of God, and he was there on the direction of God. Writer of Hebrews says this in Hebrews 11, 8 through 10, the faith chapter. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed and went out, and knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promises. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Abraham had his mind set on the things of God and not the things of the world. We need to be more like Abraham and less like Lot. We need to get our mind set on the things of God. Get your mind off this world. It's hard to do. I'm a baseball fan. I love the Atlanta Braves, but sometimes when my mind should be on the things of God, I'm wondering if they won today. I'm wondering what is happening. We've got to be very careful with the things to keep our mind in the right thing and keep the right perspective and understand, as Abraham had that mindset, it's all about God. It's all about the things of God. We've got to reach a soul while we're so focused on worldly things and vexing ourselves with the unlawful things of this world, the ungodly things. Souls are dying. We've missed another opportunity to reach them because we're trying to embrace them. We've missed another opportunity to tell them the truth because we didn't want to hurt their feelings, when we need to know the mind of God. That there's a way of sharing the gospel with love. And sometimes the truth hurts. We should be more like Abraham and less like Lot. Today, too many are like Lot than we are Abraham. We're far more worldly minded than we should be. Maybe it's just pastor. Too many times, I'm far too worldly minded. Confession, good for the soul, right? Sometimes, Sister Good, I'm way too worldly minded. And that's when I have to take myself to that altar and say, God, help me to get the right perspective. Because too many times we'll think it's about success. We'll think it's about what we need to accomplish about our name. And we're too concerned about our name and concerned about our reputation and concerned about what others will think. And if I do this, Jesus didn't care what they thought when he went in and ate with publicans and sinners. He didn't care. Because he said, my meat is to do the will of the Father. Abraham didn't care what everybody else did. They said, where are you going, Abraham? He said, I don't know. I just know God sent me there. You may be on this journey and say, I don't have no clue where I'm going. But if you know God sent you there, march on, child of God. March on in faith. Trust God. Put your confidence in God. We need to get our mind straight. We need to do what my daddy told me to do there that day in that bedroom when he pointed in. You need to get your head on straight, boy. We need to get our minds straightened out. We need to begin to seek those things which are above instead of those things which are beneath. Let's Paul was telling us in Colossians 3, 1 through 4, in closing tonight. It's just good if you'll come and help me close this evening. He said, if ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. For ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, oh, we got to get a hold of that, church. To me, He's become everything. He's everything that I need. He writes here to the Colossians, when Christ, who is our life. Is He your life tonight? He's coming back. When Christ, who is our life, shall appear, then shall ye also appear with Him in glory. We should be seeking the things of God more than the things of this earth. We should be seeking the will of God more than promotion of man. We should be seeking the anointing of God more than the accolades of man. I don't preach for approval, but I must preach under the anointing. We cannot sing for approval, but we must sing under the anointing. Anything we do for God, we need to get our minds set more on the things of God. We should be girding up the loins of our minds, keeping our minds disciplined. We should be seeking to do all that God wants us to do as obedient children. Stand with me this evening and understand this as you're standing. If we do these things, and only if we do these things, will we be ready for the coming of the Lord. A lot of people's not excited about the rapture because they're not ready for the rapture. A lot of people are scared of dying because they're not ready to meet Him. I don't want that to be said of me, and I don't want that to be said of you. We sung tonight, I'm getting ready to leave this world. But my prayer is that each one of us could change the words of that song and be able to sing, I'm already ready. I'm just waiting on the trumpet. I've got all ready. I've girded up the loins of my mind. I've got my mind set on God. My meat is to do the will of the Father. My desire is to please Him. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. Somebody comes in your house and said, I'm going to take your TV. That you'd be able to say, so what? I'm going to take your radio from you. So what? I'm going to take your books and your magazines. I don't care. Just give me Jesus. I try to sing that song sometimes, shackled by a heavy burden. To know that I could be shackled and take the food that I eat and all of those things. But as long as I know Jesus, then I know that I could still go free. I don't want all that this world has to offer me. Just give me Jesus. To have my heart and my mind set upon His will. Church, if we'll do these things, we'll be ready for the coming of the Lord. But if you find yourself coming up short in any of these areas, this altar's for you tonight. And you may say, I just got to make sure. I've got some adjustments I need to make. I've just been too accustomed and too adjusted to the things of this world. I need to get myself in focus. Don't think for a moment that anybody's going to look at you with a critical eye, because anybody and everybody that's honest in this house tonight knows that we need to make some tweaks. That we can afford to let go of some things and take hold of some things. We need to lay aside some weights and some sins and some things that is besetting us, because we've got a race to be run. We've got to gird up the loins of our mind. We've got to get ourselves, maybe you haven't been thinking right. There's those that are part of our congregation that hadn't been thinking right. We need to pray for them because they're not thinking right. But maybe that's you tonight. You haven't been thinking right. You said, Lord, I need to submit my mind to You, my heart to You. Maybe you need to recommit yourself to the will of God. Maybe you've caught yourself getting off track like we talked about last week. If that's you tonight, as I pray, I want you to begin to make your way around this altar. If you just say, I just want to get a checkup. I want to just pray, search me. I just want to be sure everything is right. I want you to come. If that's not you tonight, when you see somebody come, you follow them and pray for them. Because if you got it all right, you got your mind, you're thinking right, they need your prayers. They need your help. Let's help each other make it home. Father, we submit ourselves